Ben, looking at your background, it's actually super interesting because I feel like this is the typical founder story. So
Yeah.
let me see if I got this right. You start a company, lasts about a year. You start another company, lasts about 18 months, and now you're on your third company and it's been going for 3+ years.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a bit about that journey? Like what happened with these first couple of companies and how did you end up doing what you're doing today?
Yeah. Well, Antoine, as I'm sure is common amongst founders, there's a graveyard of other startups and ideas that did not make it to the LinkedIn page, right? So I think those are the Coles notes of the ones that were able to take up some time for sure. But I grew up with super entrepreneurial parents. I think I've been unemployable pretty much my whole life, and so pretty quickly after school, I knew that I wanted to get into some form of startups or company building or, really just doing something on my own. And and my background is actually in mechanical engineering, mechanical and aerospace. So I'm a hardware guy first and foremost. But when I was, going through university and grad school and shortly after, like I'm sure many founders, all my friends had app ideas, myself included. None of us knew how to build it. And so I figured, hey, I should be the guy to take the courses and figure that out. And so, taught myself how to code really out of necessity of wanting to solve some problems. That led me into, I think my first kind of legitimate startups. Let me put it that way. And so, right out of school, first one I was working on, it was a company called Sapling Robotics. We were building a beach cleaning robot, which was really exciting. So it was my first foray into, building an early team, starting to work in sales a little bit. We were selling to governments, as well as to, raise my first little bit of money. So I was co-founder and CEO of that company at the time, which was really exciting to start to see all the different aspects of what it takes to not only get a product off the ground, but try to convince people that they should care about it. And I think one of the biggest dangers of founders, and I think technical founders especially, is there's always a bit of a mentality of we kind of alluded to this before we started recording here, but if I build it, they will come. And that is not the case. And I think my first startup taught me that pretty aggressively. From there, ended up moving into an EdTech startup. Again, I was in grad school at the time, and so I think it's pretty typical that you solve the problems that are closest to you. And so I started working with a few different friends on a marketplace application. This is again just as I had started to learn how to code, and so was excited about bringing something to the market. And so we found a gap there. We were able to get our first few users, which was really exciting. And that was my first attempt at B2C marketing, which is what Chexy does now is purely B2C, but that was my first kind of glance into that world, which is crazy for its own reasons. That was awesome. I learned a lot. Got to work with the universities. We had a lot of great early users, people using the platform. I think the next big lesson I learned out of that, and apologize for the digression, but I'll walk through it a little bit. Very hard to make money off of students. I'll say it that way. It's kind of blending those first two startups together. Yes, you need to find people that care about the problem. You also need to find people that care enough the problem, enough to pay for it. And I think that was an important second lesson for me as well. Just before Chexy, I was with a few friends in one kind of final startup there. It was called Manor. It was in the PropTech space. My first kind of foray into money movement and real estate transactions and stuff like that. And this idea had been done before. It's a little bit newer in Canada, but it's essentially buying and selling homes without a realtor. That was the big value prop. And again, really exciting business. I think we had a blast building that tech. We built some like online bidding platforms and went through KYC verification and all these kind of early things for me. And I think it was a good intro into what I'm doing now. In that most of the opposition came from just fighting with a space that's not quite ready to change. I think that business was a few years earlier than it was. It would succeed a few years from now. I think we were a little bit early trying to do it, in that the market wasn't quite
Yes.
ready, and fighting that kind of legacy real estate system was quite challenging. And so, again, left for a number of reasons. I think we weren't seeing the growth felt that we wanted to see, and ended up getting connected with my co-founder, Lisa, who's our CEO. We actually met on Y Combinator, the co-founder matching. It's like Tinder for co-founders. And so she comes from traditional banking. She was at Square, had this kind of concept to be able to pay rent online due to her experience, coming to Canada and relocating from Vancouver to Toronto. And I've always been interested in fintech. My parents were in finance, and so it's always been kind of a sector that's close to my heart. And I thought real estate wasn't challenging enough to fight those battles, and so we decided to move on, and we're now fighting the banks, which is a blast, in its own regard. So again, I know maybe a bit of a ramble there, but that's kind of the long and short of how we got to where we are now.
So let's just jump into Chexy. Earn
Sure.
rewards on rent, bills, and taxes. Like you said, I mean, I'm surprised this didn't exist in the past. So explain it to us. How did it work?
Yeah, so again, we started in the rent sector, and give that background a little bit. My co-founder, my CEO Lisa, was working at Square Payments in Canada. She was relocated from Vancouver to Toronto, and her realtor and landlord asked her to submit 12 months of void checks. This was 2021, when it seems like, hey, we should probably be moving money in a little bit of a different way. And so that kind of caused us to look at the rent sector as a whole. Obviously, that's a big place. I've come, speaking of coming from experiences, I've just recently done a marketplace app. I knew I didn't want to get into the, rental side of things. Sorry, my cat's here. Let me extradite for a second. But we wanted to hone in on one section that we knew was a real pain point, and that was the financial side of it. We know, for looking at the stats at the time, they're still true today. Roughly 60% of Canadians are renting, and from those 60%, another 60% is typically what you're spending on rent from your take home. And so for most people, this is by far the biggest expense that they have. And obviously, great to have a roof over your head. I understand that's the point. But financially, it wasn't getting you any further ahead, right? There weren't rewards. You're not getting points on that. It's not helping boost credit at the time, or anything like that. And so for us, it seemed like a very obvious beachhead into the rental market of, hey, if we can build a platform very simply that allows you to pay your rent online with a credit card, we can handle the ledgering, the disbursement, we'll pay out your landlord. You can kind of get those funds, those rewards, those points from the credit card companies. And so that was kind of the original thesis of Chexy. That's what we raised our pre-seed round on. And that was the original kind of MVP that we brought to market in Canada. So it was about 7 or 8 months of kind of development behind the scenes before we were able to bring it to life. March 2023 is when we were able to finally bring it to market across Canada. And things have obviously stemmed from there, right? We've been able to get acceptance into things like bills and taxes, like you alluded to. Originally, we were only able to pay out via e-transfer. We can now do bill pay and pre-authorized debit. And so our kind of goal right now is, we want you to be able to pay anything within Canada, and we're going to be able to pay it out to your recipient, and you're going to be able to earn points on it. So that was kind of that's, I guess, the Coles notes of that original vision to the high level of where we are now.
So Ben, how does it work? Let's say I want to start earning points on my rent. How can I
Yeah.
get started immediately?
Awesome. Yeah. So our platform obviously walks you through all of the onboarding. You got to go through some basic KYC. You got to give us some details on who you are, who you want to pay, and then some details about the payment specifically. So who's the recipient? What's the amount? How do they typically accept funds? So is it e-transfer, pre-authorized debit, or bill pay? And then, what's the frequency, and when does it want to go out? So for rent, for example, most commonly people are paying monthly on the first of the month. You would set that up, activate that subscription, and add your credit card. Once that's all set up, we charge users 3 business days before. So if you're on the first, we're going to charge you on the 27th or 28th or 29th, depending on the month. We collect those funds. We have those all ledgered internally. You can obviously see that as a user to see everything's in progress, and card was charged successfully and all that kind of stuff. And then on rent day, we send out the money to your recipient based on the method that you selected. So onboarding takes a few minutes. Obviously, there's some compliance hurdles we got to jump through, being a Canadian fintech company, but after those few minutes, it really truly is set it and forget it. And we make it quite easy to add multiple subscriptions. So since launching those other payout subscription options like taxes, like utilities, bills, things like that. We do see the average Chexy user now is paying 2 or 3 different subscriptions on the app, which is really exciting to see. So maybe they're paying rent and utilities, or they're paying property tax, or things like that.
How'd
Sure.
you make money?
So it's a great question. So we charge a fee up front on Canadian domestic cards. The fee is traditionally 1.75%. The reason we kind of arrived at that is average rewards card in Canada gets about 2. The premium cards obviously net you a lot more. So if you, again, Scotia Momentum Visa Infinite is one of the favorite cards amongst our users, gets you 4% back on recurring bills. So for our users that are already kind of points optimizers, which is definitely where we started, you can do that math to recognize you're arbitraging 2.25%, which on rent is not a trivial amount. So we have users that are getting, definitely a couple hundred up to $1,000+ a year on cash back. And points is very similar as well. If you know how to play that points game with the redemption, you're able to kind of leverage that so that you can travel. We got a lot of amazing reports via customer support and on Reddit of users that have been able to leverage their rent payments through Chexy to buy a flight somewhere they haven't been able to go before. And so what we're always working to do is obviously get that fee as low as we can for our users. So we've got a lot of great referral incentives. So as you continue to refer users and they sign up to Chexy, we can get that fee down. I believe now the lowest tier is down to 0.5%. Which can be quite lucrative, obviously, if you have a premium card. So, yeah, primarily on the transaction volume is our main rev source right now.
So as long as the cashback percentage is higher than the fee that you're taking as a platform, and which you said was on average 2%, and
Yeah,
your fee is about 1.5, then you're getting paid without the user actually losing any money.
exactly. So the user is able to positive arbitrage that to get their points and
Hmm.
cash back. We can make money as a company to be able to pay the network, and so it really is a win-win situation.
Then this is awesome. I'll end with this. Is this available across Canada?
Yes, yeah, we're across the country right now. We're in every province and territory, including Quebec, which I know was tricky for some compliance reasons, but we're there and we're excited. And yeah, we recently also or launched a partnership with Air Canada and Aeroplan, which has been very exciting to get points. And so you should see us, popping up in the airports now. So keep an eye for some Chexy ad next time you're in Pearson or the Montreal airport there. But yeah, we're across the country and we're able to serve Canadians in a number of different aspects for sure.
Ben, that's really awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. I really enjoyed this, and I'm actually super excited to diving a lot deeper into Chexy.
Yeah, I love it, Antoine. I appreciate the time and the questions, and it was great to chat.